Good morning. Good morning. Good morning at home. Good morning here in the room. The faces are expanding in terms of who we see. It's just a little bit hot, Andy. Our awareness of the land we know as home, the contours, the paths, the trees, the rocks, the skies, the animals, the waters, they take on renewed and animated significance this week as we witness scene by scene the plight of the people whose homes and lives and futures are being attacked brutally in Ukraine. It's why we have sunflowers on our altar today. And even as we are inspired by the courage and clarity of those who are resisting and defending with integrity what they know and love, our hearts and our prayers ring in empathy with those people's suffering. True? I've been hearing that from you. I'm struck by the kinship of this empathy and the reason that we repeat a land acknowledgement here every Sunday in words crafted by the people it names, people whose lives and home were brutally attacked on this soil in what so many of us now think of as home. I typed Ukraine into Google Maps and asked for directions. I received this message: sorry, we could not calculate directions from Grass Valley, California to Ukraine. But in fact, we can calculate such directions, and without the need for technology. It's the very same spirit and the very same Unitarian Universalist values that ask us to care about both sets of suffering. Though the visible and active brutality is separated by 100-some years and 6,146 miles. If we could leave from the Grass Valley Airport, it would take around 13 hours to fly directly to Kyiv. But of course, we can get there much more quickly. Just as our hearts can, if we travel across time and across awareness to the Nisenan people who have known this land as home for thousands of years. So I invite you to receive this now very familiar land acknowledgement with renewed ears, renewed hearts, renewed empathy, and renewed commitment. It's offered today by Jenny Dewey.
In our commitment to be in right relationship with the descendants of this area's indigenous people, we place a small basket of black oak acorns on our altar each week. In so doing, we acknowledge the Nisenan people are still here among us today, though nearly invisible after generations of erasure and exclusion from California history. We understand we are on Nisenan land that was never ceded, and the original tribal families have yet to recover from the genocide of their people. As residents or visitors in Nisenan Rancheria in Nisenan land, we support the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe in efforts to stabilize their people, as well as the campaign to restore tribal sovereignty through federal recognition.
Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May
so beautiful. It is so nice to begin with singing, and such a beautiful hymn, powerfully sung too. Thank you. The light of hope, and the light of peace, and the light of love is certainly shining upon each face. What I see of it behind the mask. Both here upon the shining faces in the sanctuary of the Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains actual building in downtown Grass Valley, California, and upon the faces of each of you joining us over Zoom from the local community and beyond. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Yes, welcome home. For some, this place, this community has felt like home for many, many years. And others of us are still searching for a spiritual home and have newly landed here, maybe as recently as this morning. And for some of us, these rooms hold so much history. And for some, not as much. And there are even some of us who have yet to come inside and are getting to know our church outside the walls of our physical building. Here at UUCM, whether online or in the building, we are welcome to bring our whole selves, our heritages, our traditions, our identities and orientations, our abilities, both seen and unseen, our beliefs and faiths, our shine and our shadow. My name is Beth Caro, and I am happy to be serving as the worship associate for this Sunday morning's service, the first of the month of March. March, where together we will be exploring the theme of renewing faith through a variety of offerings. This is also the beginning of our stewardship season, and you'll be hearing more about that soon from some of the members of our stewardship team, some of whom are here today to help with the service. For now, in this brief but special time, with wonder filling this moment we share together, let us try to set down whatever burdens we're carrying. I'm sure there's plenty. Whether it's the troubling news of the world or troubles closer to home. We can choose to pick them up again afterwards. For now, though, let us worship. It is so good to be together. Welcome.
We light this chalice for renewal of our faith by Reverend Suzelle Lynch. Each time we light the chalice, we renew our commitment to our Unitarian Universalist faith. With the spark of a match, we make it new again, as fresh and surprising as the first day we encountered this spiritual community and realized we were home. We light this chalice for renewal of our faith.
Invite all of you at home to light your home chalice. There was a meeting the other day where I didn't have my chalice, and so I asked if anyone else did, and a whole bunch of people brought out their chalices and all lit them. It's really quite beautiful, all those little windows with different people holding up that light of the chalice. I invite us to sing. I invite you in the room to rise in body or in spirit, and maybe at home to rise in body or in spirit too. This little light of mine with yourself and this community in mind and heart.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. The love that's in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. The love that's in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. The love that's in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. The love that's in my arms, I'm gonna let it shine. Love is in my bones, I'm gonna let it shine. The love that's in my bones, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Peace that's in my soul, I'm gonna let it shine. The peace that's in my soul, I'm gonna let it shine. The peace that's in my soul, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Miss this so much. Our wisdom for all ages this morning comes, as it did last week, from the Christian tradition, out of which both universalism and Unitarianism were born. Once again, it recognizes the power of story, and in this case, the power of Leah Morris's storytelling, insight, and songwriting. You may already know this story of the fishes and the loaves, but see if you can't hear it again with, as Reverend Kevin said earlier, renewed ears.
Let me tell you about the fish and the loaves. Jesus of Nazareth was a great mystic teacher. He had this knack for taking spiritual concepts about God and life and love and teaching them in simple stories. And people loved his teachings. They loved his parables, and they were fascinated by the rumors that he could do miracles. And so they followed him and listened and waited and watched to see if something spectacular would happen. Well, on one occasion, Jesus was teaching a multitude of hundreds of people, and it was starting to get dark. It was starting to get late. So his disciples, the group of people who traveled with him, they said, Jesus, maybe we should send this crowd home so they can eat and rest, so they don't stay here and get hangry at us. But Jesus said, why would we send them away? Let's just feed them. Well, the disciples said, Jesus, we would feed them if we had any food. Jesus thought about this and said, we have hundreds of people here. Let's survey the crowd and see if anybody has anything with them. And even though the disciples knew it would take half a year's pay to come up with enough money to provide the food to feed this crowd, they did as their teacher asked. And lo and behold, there was one young man, a child really, who had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish he had just caught. The disciples, even though they knew this was nowhere near enough food to feed this crowd, they brought it to Jesus as he had requested. Jesus looked at the food, the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and he gave thanks. He thanked the child who was willing to share, and he thanked the Creator who was responsible for all bounty. And he told his disciples, go, feed the crowd. And when everyone had had their fill, there were 12 baskets of bread and fish left over. There are so many golden nuggets in this story. My personal favorite is that when Jesus saw what most of us would look at as a paltry amount of food, he didn't go, what is this? That's not enough. Jesus looked at what was there and he gave thanks. He was grateful for what was available in the moment. And this is a story about what all of us need and all of us have to do great things in the world and to do small things with great love. We've got to have faith. We have to be able to believe that what we want to see in the world is possible. You could even say that renewing our faith is the first step to doing, being, becoming anything. I have a teacher who says that we always have faith. We are always believing in something. The question is, where do we focus our faith? This story is one I grew up with, and it inspired this song. You can have faith. You can move this mountain. If you can have faith, you can calm this sea. Renew your faith at love's sweet fountain. With just a little faith, I do believe we can do anything. Take your time, look and find the path that inspires your soul. Step by step, breath by breath, you're moving towards your goal. If you can have faith, then you can change a nation. If you can have faith, you can reach a heart. We all know that faith requires cultivation. If you want to change the world, renewing your faith is a place to start. Take your time, look and find a path that inspires your soul. Step by step, breath by breath, you're moving towards your goal. If you can have faith, then you can move this mountain. If you can have faith, you can calm this sea. Renew your faith that love's sweet fountain. With just a little faith, I do believe I can do anything. With just a little faith, I do believe we can do anything.
It's fun to hear the sighs in the room of appreciation, which I know happen at home as well. As Beth and I were preparing for this morning's service, Beth mentioned that the story of the fish and the loaves did not really excite her. Even as a child, she remembers feeling incredulous at the message that 2 fish and 5 loaves could feed a giant crowd. It did not make sense. In the Catholic tradition in which I was raised, a tradition which takes so much Christian scripture more literally than I could, I actually received a very open interpretation of this story. That the generosity of that young person, maybe even the naivete of that young person, who would even think to offer up a mere 2 fish and 5 loaves to feed a mass of hungry people, that willingness, and then Jesus' gratitude and public blessing of that willingness, that what happened is that inspired the many fearful others to bring out the food they had and to share it. And when everyone, or at least enough people, did that, there was, it turned out, enough to feed all of them, enough to have 12 baskets left over. That was the miracle I learned. I was taught that the 2 fishes and 5 loaves and their giver were not discounted, but rather blessed as enough. That was the miracle. And in a way that helped others know that among them they could have what they needed. They could have what they longed for. That among them and in their sharing together was the kingdom of God they were so hoping to find somewhere, when, right there. The sharing of our joys and our sorrows every Sunday, in this wordless ritual of the stones and water or candles, in the words typed online in the chat, in the words spoken into the room. It's a reminder, really, a symbol for the sharing that's made possible wherever 2 or more are gathered in the life of this congregation. It's in the many smaller circles of caring and sharing that we get to voice to one another more deeply the vulnerable, frightening human pain, and the encouraging joys of our lives. At least that is true at our best, and when we are living into this faith tradition. It's not easy, and it takes constant attention and learning and growing and being human with each other. And so we remind ourselves of the importance of that every week, and we give ourselves this little touch, a small taste in this weekly large group ritual. May it remind us today once again of what is available among us in these living relationships that we have and hold. And if we live this tradition, this faith tradition, fully and well. If you wish, I invite you online to type into the chat some piece of the joy and sorrow that you carry. Here in the room, I invite you to come forward if you wish to place a stone, probably not the largest stones there, but place a stone in the bowl of water. And as we prepare for that, I invite you to search within. Take a moment to still your body. Perhaps remember that you're breathing in. Remember that you're breathing out. Follow that breathing into your heart and what is most resonant there this morning. May we hold each other as we do. Thank you, Beth. A candle marking all the losses that continue and that we still journey through related to COVID, the pandemic. Losses of life, but also losses of many things in life that we have loved and have been missing. As our prayer and meditation this morning, I invite you into Moira Smiley's Come and Stand in That River, sung by members of UUCM's choir with Jordan. Come and stand in that river. Come and stand in that river, current, gentle, and slow. Send your troubles down water, down on that water flow. I invite you to place yourself in the river that we share, and to place yourself in the river that you know holds you.
I went to my river, but my river was dry. The dust rose up to a darkened sky. Tell me, where is hope? Where do the waters run clear? I do not know my way from here. Come and stand in that river, current gentle and slow. Send your troubles down water, down on that water flow. When you stand in that river, angels sing in your head, secrets beyond every worry, dreams beyond every dread. Tell me, sister, brother, where does that river flow? It flows down to the great water, where sin my people will go. Come and stand in that river, current gentle and slow. Send your troubles down water, down on that water flow. When you stand in that river, angels sing in your head, Some days some pass like a rock and dream. So come and stand in that river, current gentle and slow. Send your troubles down water, down on that water flow. Come and stand in that river, current gentle and slow. Send your troubles down water, down on that water flow.
There's actually a really nice mix of people in the room who are in that video and people online who are in that video. So I invite you online to say thank you and in the room to say thank you. Our annual stewardship campaign kicks off today, in which members of the congregation are asked to consider and think about their pledge commitment, their financial commitment for the coming year, so the community can plan for the needs. That is important, and it is always about so much more than finances. For each of the next several Sundays, the stewardship team has invited a UUCM member to share some piece of what UUCM means to them, as an invitation to all of us to consider for ourselves what UUCM means or could mean to us. This morning, I'm pleased to welcome Beth Rose to begin.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Ann Rose, and I go by Elizabeth or Beth, and my pronoun is she. I am single and love to mingle. Shoot, sorry, that was not supposed to be pasted into this document. Okay, so much technology. I entered the doors of UUCM over 15 years ago, looking for a new spiritual home to raise my two boys, Max and Danny. As a young adult, I moved away from my Catholic heritage with many questions and a desire for a faith that I could be in harmony with. I was married in the Santa Monica UU Church in 1996, and I spent 2 years in the San Diego UU where my kids were dedicated prior to moving here to Grass Valley. I would come to UUCM on Sundays, and my kids were welcomed so warmly by the then religious education director, Marilyn Winters. After service, I would go for some coffee and connection. That's probably one of the most difficult things to do here when you're new. I call it the coffee clutch, because I literally would be clutching that coffee cup, wondering what the heck to do in that awkwardly small room full of people in conversation. Months went by. I really enjoyed the services, and quite frankly, the 1 hour break from my children. But I wasn't quite feeling a connection, and honestly, I wasn't sure I was going to stay. Then one day, a bright and beautiful spirit by the name of Shannon Dooley Miller invited me to come to the well-loved camping trip. This trip kickstarted my deep connection and personal growth with UUCM. I discovered so much about this community. They love making music, singing, performing around the campfire. They come from a variety of backgrounds, interests, and they have great conversations. They have the best potlucks ever, right? That's it, the best potlucks. They are fun-loving and genuinely caring, and they embrace the 7 principles. I felt like I had finally found my tribe that I could be in harmony with. And apparently they found me, because Bob Bateman called me the next week and invited me to serve on the stewardship committee. And that's how it starts, folks. While serving on this committee, I learned about our operation and finances. I was kind of blown away that through all different shapes and sizes of donations, we support all this. It was mind-blowing. During that time, I met our president, Kia Hatch. Kia seriously impressed me with her indomitable spirit and message of hope. When Kia asked me to serve as treasurer, hire our first bookkeeper, revitalize our finance committee, and do some overall finance change management, which I love, I couldn't resist supporting what she was trying to create. And frankly, my current job was a bit dull and restricted at the time. So I'm not sure how I made it work as a full-time finance manager for an IT company and a full-time mom raising my 2 young boys, but I did. And I realized I was growing both professionally and spiritually. And I lost my place. Here we go. And yeah, I found the opportunity to be a leader in a different, meaningful, and caring way in this community that did not exist in my corporate finance job and other parts of my personal life. Kia became one of my best friends, and her support has been life-changing for me. Soon I found myself serving in RE, now called Family Ministry, with Marilyn and Paul and Michelle and Joe and Lindsay and Meg and more. Marilyn was a beacon of love and wisdom to me and my children. As a mom, I was ecstatic to find the values, education, and personal stories being taught to my children. So I very much wanted to support that work by serving. During my time as treasurer, I got to know our dynamic Keith Johnson. Keith is so smart, funny, and extremely dedicated to our community. Did I mention how influencing and convincing Keith can be? Truly gifted at that. Well, he soon tagged to help me, asked me to help in stewardship again, which I did. It's sort of blurry, but over the years, I've served in a lot of different roles. I loved the camping trip. I ended up serving as the coordinator for 6 years and had so many good times. I served the board 2 more times as secretary and 1 at large. One day, as I thought I was ready to wind down my service, Dawn Bateman asked me to serve on the ministerial search committee. I was like, no way, that is a big job. She had previously served and told me it had been one of the best experiences in her life and to just give it some thought. That was a really tough decision. Our church was going through a tough transition. And I realized, though, how much I cared about this community and finding the right minister. And so I said yes. At times, it felt like a tornado had touched down on our lovely UUCM church, and the ministerial search team was watching everything we cared about so deeply swirl dangerously around us as we were doing our search. We became so bonded, and we survived, and it all turned out well, and Dawn, you were right. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. So to this day, I am so deeply connected with that team, Lindsay, Taylor, Keith, Corey, George, and of course, our minister, Kevin. Rev Kev, as I affectionately refer to him sometimes, tapped me on the shoulder to start the mission renewal process team. This was truly my labor of love. Renee, Scotty, Jim, and Rev Kevin were part of that team, and then we enlisted the mission refining team, Gail, Leslie, Susan, and Tom. They helped find all the words. And each time I read our amazing mission statement, I'm reminded how all of us played a part in that. The last 15 years has been an incredible gift in my life. My service brought me so much personal growth and connection with long-lasting friends. I can't even mention all the friends because I only have 5 minutes and I'm probably going over. They truly have seen me through my joys and sorrows. The last 2 years has thrown us a curveball, but we are here. For those of you who have been serving during this time, I just really want to thank you for your incredible service during this time. It's amazing what you're doing. And again, we're here, right? So for any of you that are curious about serving, seeking connection, and personal growth, please, I encourage you to get involved. Come chat with me, because it's true, I like to mingle. And eventually, refreshment time will return. You will have the opportunity to clutch that coffee cup, and before you know it, you will be in many conversations in our awkwardly small room of our beautiful, caring community here at UUCM. Thank you.
Beth, thank you. While it's fresh, do you have a preference for Elizabeth or Beth?
I like both.
Likes both, okay. Just for all our sakes. Thank you. Thank you for that. Last Saturday, we held a visioning workshop, an annual visioning workshop that's meant to help the minister and the board know what members are seeing as they look out into UUCM's future. And so to help inform the decisions about where to invest congregational energy and resources and attention in the coming year on the way to such a future that can be seen. In part because of how we asked the question, but also because of where we are in the rhythm of these times. What came through most strongly last Saturday in that visioning, what came across most passionately certainly, was not so much a vision for the future as a vision for this moment, right now. In my own mind, I likened it to when you're traveling on uneven terrain or hiking a challenging, narrow mountain trail with steep drop-offs, and you find yourself looking down at your feet and what's right in front of you so you don't trip and fall or otherwise injure yourself. It's hard to look very far ahead when the landscape you're traveling is so demanding and perhaps even dangerous sometimes. And I have to tell you that metaphor was very fresh in my mind because 1 year ago exactly, yesterday, I was hiking the Stevens Trail, where parts of the trail are narrow, not necessarily here, it's a little after this, and the drop-off steep sometimes, and where the rock layers there have been thrust almost directly upward, meaning on the trail there are a lot of toe obstacles for you. About 2 hours in, I stubbed my toe, tumbled forward, hit my head on a rock, bruised my shoulder, and happily did not go over the edge. My big toenail was eventually a casualty, but that was the worst of it. Again, a metaphor for these times. But back to last Saturday, and the vision responses being close in. As a preparation for looking ahead to a vision, we had invited people to name something in their personal lives that has been constant, that they've been able to count on no matter what. There are many beautiful answers. My love for my spouse, my family, nature, breath. The most common answers being about family, friends, love, relationship. And then we extended that focus to include this community. And we asked, what will be true about UUCM no matter what? No matter who comes and goes, no matter who is elected United States president, no matter what shape the building's in, no matter what happens in the world, what is one thing that is constant in UUCM that you can count on no matter what? We invited everyone to send their words for that something constant to a word cloud, in which the more times a word is entered, the larger it appears. Here are the results so far. Caring, community, love, at the center, very literally. And then justice, acceptance, covenant, beloved community, service, connection, principles, wholeness, support. In other words, family, friends, love, relationship. I'll let you know that you can answer our vision question online if you weren't there last Saturday. It's in a survey, and the links are in both the Mountain Chalice and the E-Chalice in my columns, so I encourage you to do that if you haven't. What surfaced strongly in the remainder of that visioning session last Saturday, what surfaced in a variety of ways, and in the emotions as well as the words, was not a vision out to the horizon, but rather the important close-in vision, the close-in vision. The idea that what the congregation needs to invest in now and next and first and foremost is the relationships and the sense of connection to each other and the congregation. Connection that has been stretched thinner and thinner for many during the pandemic, during an electronic screen-centered existence, without the physical interactions and informal weaving that happens when we encounter each other face to face. Connection has to be attended to and strengthened first, was the message. The community needs to reconnect and renew its relationships to discover who it is now in order to be anchored strongly enough for any of the rest. Certainly before people will be able to even see a vision into the future or invest attention very far beyond what's at our feet. Now, that wasn't the only message or everyone's message. There were also visions for engaging and supporting young adults, families, youth, visions for developing staffing and helping people connect to meaningful opportunities to volunteer and serve this congregation, visions for a physical space that allows all of the rest to blossom wherever it is, here or elsewhere, and for the congregation to live its mission. And it doesn't mean that reconnecting is the only thing that can happen, but I do believe that insight is right, that close-in insight, that what has to be a primary investment and focus in the short term, for the sake of the long term, is that sense of connectedness. 2 years ago, the last two big in-person events this congregation held were the visioning session in January 2020, Love Reaches Out, and the Stewardship kickoff dinner on February 29, Leap Day, with the theme of Roaring 2020. A fun and festive evening with colorful attire, delicious food, Tom Wernig's song about the challenge of finding parking here, an evening in which Anita Wald-Tuttle and Burnell Scott, here on the right, Anita here in the room today, held a surprise burning of the mortgage for this building. Exactly 2 weeks before the pandemic shut down. Karen Packard, who was the congregation president then, identified the essentials. She said, as she spoke that evening, when the two of us, your president and minister, met to consider what we might say tonight as we look out from our vantage points at this moment, 2020, as we look back into the past and all that has led UUCM to today, and as we look out on UUCM now as it's unfolding, as we turn our eyes and hearts toward the road into the future, we recognize three essential aspects of this community. The same top three aspects, it turns out, that 40-something of you surfaced in the Love Reaches Out workshop on January 29 of 2020. Those three aspects are caring and connection, inspiration and learning, and action, all leading to commitment to a future full of possibilities and presence. At the very center of it all, Karen said, is caring and connection. We even had a slide for it. Karen had spoken with numerous members as she prepared for the stewardship kickoff. And about that, she said, I focused on trying to discern who UUCM is at its core. A congregation doesn't become such an inspiring and accepting place without strong roots and a firm foundation, she said. What are the components that anchor us? How does who we are impact our future? She said, I propose one component, something quite simple to name, but profound in its execution and life-affirming effect. To me, she said, the foundation of UUCM, the glue that causes us to be anchored in readiness for the future, is our caring and connection. UUCM is a congregation where people are walked beside and cared for, she wrote. It's true, right? At our best, and is indeed the inspiring core at the center of beloved community, a core in which all the rest has to be anchored. Now, I'm trying to figure out what to say today as part of launching this year's stewardship effort, a campaign in which you members will be asked to consider the value and the importance of this community to you, in which you'll be asked to commit to support it in very tangible ways. I thought a great deal about the nature of giving in such uncertain times, when so much is unknown. At first, I was going to say I've been thinking about the nature of giving to an uncertainty. And that's partly true always. But Saturday, a number of you named that core Karen talked about as the thing that you can count on at UUCM. Love, caring, community, even if it feels more distant and tenuous for some at this moment. In part, yes, connection needs to be renewed, including bodily, I know. Chances to be together more will be increasingly important to reconnecting for most of us. In part, reconnecting needs to be invested in, strengthened, shored up through our many decisions about where to put our energy, our time, our resources. In part, connection needs to be remembered, recalled. In part, connection needs you to sink your roots, your energy, your attention into relating to one another, so that together from there we'll be able to reach out through learning and inspiration toward action, toward that courageous commitment. This year, more than most, that probably requires renewing some faith, which is never about certainty, but instead about promise and longed for possibility. More than any of the years I've been serving you in this congregation, in fact, more than any of the years I've been serving in ministry, period, this emotionally exhausting time, this rough, narrow path landscape with steep drop-offs every few feet and many toe-stubbing protrusions will require a good measure of faith, commitment to what you know can be true, rather than to what you are certain will be true. The theme of this year's stewardship campaign, led by Mary Ann Currington and the stewardship team, is "And the River Keeps Flowing," accompanied by Janet Bullock's beautiful painting. As I look at Janet's capturing of our nearby beloved river, I'm remembering arriving in Grass Valley in August 2016, in the midst of a long, severe drought. The river was really kind of a trickle at Bridgeport, and the lake seemed mostly exposed shoreline. Just 5 months after that, as an atmospheric river stalled over the state, Wally Holton and Mel Berry and Dave McLeod were here late at night mopping up water in the basement. And Dave Edwards was drilling a hole in the back wall of the nursery to put in a spigot so the water behind the wall could come through and get drained out. We had buckets around the building to catch leaks. And the river? Water downstream from this old 49 bridge was lapping against the bottom of the wooden Bridgeport Bridge, for goodness sake. Way above where I had stood in my early visits there, way up high. And later it was a marvel to me to find debris high up in the trees, to imagine that that much water could have filled that valley. Yes, the river keeps flowing, and the flow can really vary. We know this about so many things now. Stewardship, meaning you're taking care of this congregation and its mission, is always about giving of your time and talent and treasure, all three. More than any time I've known, this next year of the journey will require all three: time, talent, and treasure, in measures that are meaningful as well as sustainable and glad. Generous as well as personally growthful. We're in such new territory. We'll have to find our way together before, during, and after my sabbatical times next year, during which connection will be so important as a core, so that no matter what the water levels, the congregation will be anchored, whether for drought or for flooding, or hopefully the happy in-between. We'll need a measure of faith for all of it. And I think it's an especially important and valuable time to invest in it. Your investment here and now, in the here and now, your faith is an investment in a future far beyond what we can see at our feet at this moment. And before I close, let me add my now familiar invitation to think and feel and act beyond either or. While figuring out what is most important is important, how the members of this community go about figuring out together what's important and what really matters most is what matters most. Relationship again. As I said, renewing a sense of connection and caring is, I think, truly a top priority, certainly in the immediate future. And that doesn't mean that other things cannot happen meanwhile, secondarily perhaps, and informed by that top priority. So for example, groundwork for engaging young adults and families and youth can be envisioned through that lens of connection as the centerpiece, to remember that. And the exploration of the facilities needs of the congregation can be understood and paced in light of that connection as the core. It's not either or. The Next Steps weekend coming up, for example, seeks the insight of a consultant to help discern next steps. It's not a weekend in which any decisions are being made about what to do about the building. The question is, what's the next step? And this is a piece of it, understanding the immediate needs. They'll be informed by the moment, and left open is the idea of what those next steps are. Those are totally open. So I want to draw on Leah Morris's words to close. They are an affirmation and an invitation. Refill your faith at love's sweet fountain. Refill your faith at love's sweet fountain. Look and find the path that inspires your soul, step by step, breath by breath. Love knows that faith requires cultivation. If you can have faith, you can move this mountain. If you can have faith, you can calm this sea. If you want to change the world, renewing your faith is the place to start. Perhaps first in each other and in the promise of this community. For all of us, each and together. So may we be. Amen.
Indeed, so may we be. Our UU faith community enjoys a weekly opportunity to renew our commitment to each other and to the work that we do here and in the wider world by participating in the collection of financial offerings. Our church is fully funded by our own fundraising, endowments, pledges, and this, the weekly offering. 25% of today's, and indeed this whole